다 도마
So first of all, I'd like to offer you all a warm greeting. So today is Chamgun Guru Vajradhara Taisut Rinpoche's birthday. And so we should all, first of all, and so we will all recite the long life prayer for Sutra Rinpoche written by the previous Trupin Dechen Rinpoche. We will recite that 3 times with the aspiration that he live for a long time, that he accomplish a vast activity just as he wishes. So today, as I mentioned the other day, I would like to begin by discussing in brief the dates of the 8 Gyalwang Karmapas, of the first 8 Gyalwang Karmapas in brief. So here, the dates I will be using today, if you're wondering what text I'm using as the basis for this, these dates come mainly come from a liberation story of the 7th Karmapa Gyaltsap written by Gyaltsap Rinpoche, the first Gyaltsap Rinpoche. There are also chronologies of the Karma Kamsa written by many past Kagyu masters. For example, there is a chronology written by Pao Tsula Chengwa, and there is a monastery in Kurup called Kurup Gonsar Monastery, and the Kempo of that monastery, Kempo Tsini Palsang, wrote a chronology as well. This is during the time of the 9th Karmapa. But the one by Gosri Palja Dundrup, the first Gyaltsap Rinpoche, is the earliest in terms of the chronology. And within that text, it gives a very complete presentation. So I'm going to use that one as the basis for my discussion. The text by Gosri Gyaltsap gives the dates of the births and deaths of the first 6 Karmapas and the birth date of the 7th. Now, there are 2 versions of this text. The first is within his liberation story, the 7th Karmapa, entitled The Liberation of Rangjung, Kunkhyen, Tsokye, Dorje, Mipham, Chökyi Drakpa. And so in that, he added this as notes. And the second is what I am showing to all of you in these reproductions. This is a manuscript called the Dates of the Incarnations of the Karmapas, and it is a 3-page manuscript. And within this one, so both of these give the clans, the birthplaces of their births, their birth date, their parents' names, and the year or the sign of their birth, the name that they're called by when they're young, the monastic name, their lifespan, and the year and date of their passing away for the first 6 Karmapas. It's very clearly presented here. So I've taken the dates of the incarnations of the Karmapas, and as well as the one that I mentioned before, the liberation of the notes in the liberation story of the 7th Karmapa. I've taken these as a basis and made a table. But in this table, when I made the table, I didn't put in the clans or the old place names. And the reason for this is that when you talk about clans, it's like one large clan has many different subdivisions. And because there's so many subdivisions, if I explain them all, it would be too complicated and you get headaches from it. So I haven't put them in. In particular, we do not make such a distinction between clans and castes. And so for these reasons, for the time being, I'm not going to speak about the clans and castes. And regarding the names of the birthplaces, if you want to search for them on the internet or on a map these days, in order to make it easier to find out, I've put down the modern place names. I have not put the old place names that are listed in the original manuscript. But I've added these new manuscripts. They're not in the original. So I've put them in a different color so that when you just immediately see them, you can understand that they are added or that they are new. Likewise, the way the names that are described in the text, and then there are different names that we normally use. And so in order to make it easy to understand, I've put the names in slightly different than in the manuscript, and I've also put them in a different color. So in general, if we want to know where the birthplaces of the Karmapas are these days and how far they are apart, what their current state is. A few years ago, I expressed my wish to a few Dharma friends in China, and they went to the actual places. And they did research and gained a good understanding and knowledge of the areas. And if we had any questions or doubts, we researched them in old histories and texts. And we were able to identify most of them. But there are still a few that probably need further research. So as I introduce or point out, tell you about these birthplaces today, I'm using the pictures that they took as they visited the sites and the information that they provided as the basis. And then in addition, I'm also using some old histories that I've read as my sources, and I will describe them in brief. So I'll speak at greater length about the I'd like to speak at greater length about the life of Dusum Khyenpa, the first Karmapa. And I'd also like to take this opportunity I would like to take this opportunity to thank all my Dharma friends who went to the birthplaces, the Karmapas, for their efforts and who helped me out. So thank you very much. So generally, before I explain the names, or before I explain the birthplaces of the different Karmapas, there's something I should explain. For example, the first Karmapa was born in the region of Trewo. Most of you probably know. It's from Trewo Kampa. The region of Trewo was the birthplace of the first Karmapa, the ninth Karmapa, the fourth Shamar Rinpoche. And so there's the place where one or two of the Shamar Rinpoches were born. Not only that, up through the time of the 10th Karmapa, there are many Kagyu lamas and monasteries in the region of Trewo. Also, there's a student of the 7th Karmapa named Chamo Goshi, who helped the teachings, the Karma Kagyus, flourish greatly, both dharmically and politically. But later, after the time of the destruction by the Mongol Gushi Khan's armies, then only Bengan Monastery, Ridok Monastery, and Gosar Monastery, only these three remained among the Kamtsang monasteries. And otherwise, other than just the stories that they used to be there and their ruins, nothing is left of the others. For that reason, fewer and fewer people have taken less interest in the history associated with the Karma Kagyu. And now that several centuries have passed, people no longer know the differences between the various incarnations of the Karmapas and between the Karmapas and Shamapas, and mix them all together into a single history when they tell the stories. And because of this, so there are several remaining oral histories. And if you look for sources for them, though, you can't really say that there's no source categorically. But there are many situations where it isn't exactly it wasn't necessarily exactly as they are told. And so these are things that we need to understand and that we need to that we need to consider. And so when we are trying to identify the locations of historical events, it is important for us to pay respects to the personages and to continue to remember their histories and the actual traces of the actual signs of their deeds. And if there's just a different explanation or a different way of expressing it, there's no point to debate about whether that is all right or not. And so what I'm trying to explain today is in order that the histories become clear. And so that we have a little bit more interest in the history. I'm not saying that one is right or the other isn't. So now I'd like to tell the actual dates of their births. The first Karmapa, Dusum Khyenpa, the birthplace of the first Karmapa, Dusum Khyenpa, is this place. This is the actual place. And so this is the table that I have made. And if you look at the table, the name of the birthplace is in blue. And that is the current name. And so his father name is Gompa Dorje, and his mother is Lhatok Sagang. And his birth year is male iron tiger in 1110. Before he was, his given name before he was became a monk was Gepel. And his name after he took ordination was Chökyi Drakpa. He lived to the age of 84. And so this is the Tibetan way of counting. It's not the in terms of the Western way. So in terms of for the Western way of counting, it would be 83. And he passed away on the first lunar month of the third day, the first lunar month of the female water ox here, or it could actually be the 11th month. Now, what it says in the actual text is, what it says is that in the actual is that his birthplace is Lhatok and Che. When we talk about Lhatok and Che, so it says in the manuscript that Dusum Khyenpa's birthplace is Lhatok and Che. Che is spelled differently. Sometimes it's spelled with a ka, so Krewo. Often it's spelled with a Trew. But in modern times it is Che Ho. So in the old days they called it Che Wo. In these days, it is in the Kardze district. And so Lhatok, there are different spelling. There is some spell Ratak, so some spell Ratzak, and others spell Lhatok differently. So there are different spellings of it. But most of the Kagyu histories spell it as Lhatok. And so now within this, it says that he was born in Che Lhatok. But these days, people say that Dusum Khyenpa is in Bochok. Bochok is a place. And they say that there are still some descendants of his family there. And there are many stories related to that, and also artifacts that they can show. And so for these reasons, most people take their explanation as for a given, or as the basis, and they say that Dusum Khyenpa was born in Bochok. Also, in 2010, when we celebrated the 900th anniversary of Dusum Khyenpa's birth, we wrote in the book and in the internet files that it was Bochok. But I often take interest in history. So most of the old histories and liberation story say he was born in Lhatok and Che. I never saw that he was born in Bochok. So I had a bit of a doubt whether his actual birthplace was Bochok or not. But one good thing that happened is that a year or two ago, I received an old document. And when I received that and I read it, I was able to dispel all my doubts as to where Dusum Khyenpa was born. And so this is the letter as I'm showing you. And so there's a little bit of a problem. I left out a punctuation mark when I did it in a hurry. And what this says is that this document was written by the 8th Karmapa Dorje's personal physician and attendant. Gyalwang Karmapas Jitme Ngagi Gyaltso. So he's the author of this. The subject of this document is how the reincarnation of Mikyo Dorje, that is Wangchuk Dorje, and he was born at a place called Taksang near the foot of Mount Kowloon in Lower Tre. So these days it's called Taksang Nang. So that is the ninth Karmapa's birthplace. And after the ninth Karmapa was born, they sent some attendants. The fifth Shamar, Kuncha Yenlak, sent Gyalwang Shankarwa, Gonja Chungju Kunga, and other monks for a total of 10, specifically from the encampment to offer him food, clothing, and so forth, and to take care of him. So they started in Utsang in central Tibet. And this document describes the regions along the way, the monasteries, and the history associated with them. They took notes of these until they achieved at Buddhism. And so this is called the Vajra Splinter Travelogue. And so within this, it's descriptions of the places in Upper and Lower Tre and the monasteries that were there at that time, and the information related to the birthplace of Dusum Khyenpa are all described very clearly. So I think this is a really great source for research into the history of Trewo, and especially the histories of Dusum Khyenpa. So today I'm using this travelogue as the basis, and I've supplemented it with a few other old histories. And I thought I should give a brief introduction to Dusum Khyenpa's birthplace. Now this travelogue, the Vajra Splinter travelogue, is describes the area of Trewo and of the area of Trewo and the area and the surrounding areas. And so it is written in verse, but that's not so easy to understand. So I've written it out in prose. And when the author arrived in Trewo, the first thing he saw, he says, was Treto Gangri Yukar, or the Yukar snow mountain in Upper Tre. So that's, and so that I'm showing a picture of a mountain that is the snow mountain Upper Tre. Now these days they no longer call it a snow mountain. They call it a rock mountain. So it's probably that the glaciers have melted and it's now all just a rock mountain. And so this is the first thing that he saw. Then he went to Chakrasamka, the estate of the Lord of Ling. Then he writes, I went to a place an hour or two ride away to where there's the Karmapas monastery called Guntra. Now I've put a map there. Now this map is in Chinese. Now you won't necessarily understand it all right now, but so if you had never been, I've never been there, so it doesn't necessarily come to, so I can't explain it too, so it doesn't so vivid to me, but basically, so there's the Karmapas monastery called Gunta, and there was a hoofprint there left by Chudok Kyasu's horse named Zamling Norbo. And so people put a horse footprint, but for the horse, so horses have hooves, not feet. So there's a hoofprint left by that horse. Then a half day's journey away, there is Bumchok, the birthplace of the fourth Shamar Rinpoche. Now Bochok. So that is the ash. This is the place. Now, the place I was just pointing to, but if I point my finger at it, you can't see, right? And then after that, At a place as far as the sound of a conch would carry, I saw the ruins of Chökyi monastery that had been built by Dusum Khyenpa but was burned down by the Sakya Lama Chapmo Situ Tanakchen. So the Kamtsang monastery in Che, I will speak about it a little bit more later. So it was a monastery, a Kagyu monastery, but it was later. It had been built by Dusum Khyenpa, but later it was been attacked and burnt down by the Sakya Lama Chapmo Situ Tanakchen. And so the author saw the ruins of this monastery. And then after that, following that, I saw the Horse Fence Monastery. And so I'm not certain what this Horse Fence Monastery. Now this is called, so there's a monastery. So it has 3 different levels, they say. I'm not sure with this exact picture. I didn't think so much about the pictures, but at any rate, the main. So I primarily took interest in the text. So there is the Horse Fence Monastery that has 3 monasteries on 3 different levels. And so at that time, there was still debate as to whether it was a Sakya monastery or a Kagyu monastery. And so, but it was also still there at the time that the author went. And then, again, the place as far as the sound of conch would carry, there's a place called Rangjung. And so this is here, it says Rangjung, but this is the same as Lhatok. And so he said that identifies this as the birthplace of Dusum Khyenpa. So this is, so Rangjung Zhongzo is what they call it these days. Then if you face to the west from there had been a tower named Sekar that was built by the Tsenlhasa, who was the lord of Ling. So it was a tower that she built. But in later times, the tower collapsed, and its ruins, they built a bunch of broken down old houses on its ruins. So though there was no longer any tower there, it was still called Sekar at that time that the author arrived there. And then if you go to the east from there, as far as the sound of a conch would carry, there was a stupa in which Dusum Khyenpa's goatskin coat, that is a coat that had been made out of the skin of a goat, his sling, for carrying rocks, a flint pouch, pots, and so forth, and that had been put in it. And outside of that, there was a 2-story temple. Now, all the murals in the temple had been painted at a later time. And on the path around that, there are footprints of Dusum Khyenpa and so forth. And so that Ratsak is that stupa, the Ratsak stupa is still there. It's called the Ratsak or the goatskin coat. So now it is taken care of, or it is owned by Sakya, the Sakya lineage. Then if you go to the uplands of Lhatok, so if you go to the top of the valley, there is a cave where Dusum Khyenpa practiced Padalhama. I'm not sure what it's called these days. And at that, when he was practicing there, Dusum Khyenpa had a vision of Padalhama, and then she dissolved into the rock face. And so Padalhama, there was a self-arisen image of Palden Hamba that arose when she dissolved. So this is written in great detail. But I'm not able to explain it all today because I don't have time to talk about it. In any case, when I first saw that travelogue, only then did I really feel that it was clear that Dusum Khyenpa's birthday is Lhatok. Now, these days people say that it's Bochok, but in the old days, people said it was Bumchok. So, because a chupa has like a bumba or a vase. And so I think it must have been some stupa there. But so when you talk about, and anyway, Bumchok is the birthplace of the fourth Shamar Rinpoche. So I think this is very clear. But as I said, mentioned earlier, for very reasons, sometimes we confuse the earlier and the later incarnations. We might also mistake who is a Shama and who is a Karmapa. And it is possible that the descendants of Karmapa's family moved. They used to be in one place, but then they moved to another. And they went to a different place, but they still say there was a Karmapa born in our family. You can still say that, right? And when you say that, what people don't understand? When you say that, then people think, oh, the place where that family is now is where the Karmapa was born. And so it's not impossible that people might think this. So I think it's very important to really establish this definitively. And in particular, if I can get a detailed liberation story of the fourth Shamar Rinpoche, then I can really look into it. So generally, we have a lot of oral histories. It's not that I'm ignoring all of these old oral histories, but the primary thing is that if we look at the old histories and research those as well, I think it's be beneficial to use those as well. When I say that this is the birthplace of Dusum Khyenpa, I'm not saying that it definitely has to be like that. No, but because of time, that's all I can really say. But I think that in the future, I should do more research and write in detail about the region of Triu, the connections between Triu and the Kagyu lineage, and as well as the birthplaces of the first Karmapa, the ninth Karmapa, the fourth Shama, and so forth. And then I should write a paper about this. And I think that this will fill a blank spot in the history of the Trewa, and so that is my hope. And so I think here is a good place to leave our we'll take our break now, and we will reconvene in 40 minutes. So next, in terms of the dates of to digress from the dates of Dusum Khyenpa. What I would like to speak about is that, as they probably already know, one of the most important of Dusum Khyenpa's deeds was to found many monasteries, including the three main monastic seats, and establishing a foundation for the Karma Kamtsang teachings. When we talk about the upper, middle, and lower seats, the three seats, there are several different ways that we can describe them and identify them. However, generally, it's basically giving them different ways of naming them. They're calling them the upper, middle, and low seats, the places of three chakras of body, speech, and mind, and so forth. So there are a few different ways that they are identified, or that they're named. If we think about the in terms of talking about the three chakras of the body, speech, and mind, the reason why they're called the places of body, speech, and the chakras of body, speech, and mind is that in terms of the father and mother figures of chakra samvara, father and mother figures of the practice of chakra samvara, they're listed as the sites of the father's body, speech, and mind. That is the male chakra samvara. Also, in Mikhya Dorje's own description of various sites, or in his instructions on the chakra samvara tantra, he said that in the places meditating on the chakra samvara, there are the places where the three channels, the central, the right, and the left, came inside are Tsurpu, Kampu Nenang, and Karma Kagyu. So those are those three. But when we talk about the three places, the ways that the three places are identified, in order to describe it just in general, I'd like to use the instructions by the guidebook written by the fourth Shamar Rinpoche, the sixth Shamar Rinpoche, Chökyi Drakpa. And in his guidebook to the Kampa and Nenang, what he wrote is that the Kampa had students as numerous scars in the sky. But he said to Dusum Khyenpa, I have the highest hope in you, white-haired Kampa, or Dusum Khyenpa. And he entrusted the teachings of the Kagyu to Dusum Khyenpa. And he said to Dusum Khyenpa, go to Kampa Gamra and Kam and retreat there. Your benefit to beings will spread throughout Kam, U, and Sang, he predicted. Likewise, Je Gongtso gave a similar prophecy. And so for that reason, Dusum Khyenpa went to Kam, and went to Kampa Nenang and did a retreat there. And that is where he found the supreme accomplishment, or realized the nature of the Dharma nature. He nurtured students, and as he realized that, he nurtured many students with realization and founded the first monastic seat. And then he founded Karma and Tulan monasteries, and and so forth. And so these became known as the three seats. So generally, there are five principal sites and seats associated with the Karmapas. So Kampa Gamra is the site of the body, open Karma is the seat of speech, and Tsurpu is the site of Mang. Pongri in the east is the site of qualities, and Pongpuk and Dap is the site of activity. And so this is written in Shamar Rinpoche's guidebook to Kampa Nenang. So Kampa Nenang was the first Karma Kamtsang monastery. These days, it has become a Gelugpa monastery. It's no longer a Kamtsang monastery. And then he founded the other monasteries in order. We talk about the five. Kampa Nenang is the site of the body. Karma is the site of speech. Tsurpu is the site of mind. Pongri is in the east is the site of qualities, and Pongpu is the site of activity. This is according to the site of according to the Shamar, sixth Shamar. That is, these are the places of the five activity, the five qualities. Likewise, in there are the three places of the Father. There are the sites of the body, speech, and mind. There's Kampa Kamra, and Kampa Kamra is the spiritual seat, is the site of the body, and Tsurpu is the site of the mind, and the site of speech is Karma. We identified these as the three chakras: body, speech, and mind. And so the main reason why these are called the the chakras of body, speech, and mind is because that between the male and female figures of chakras, there are the three sites of the female figure, and Tsari, Lachi, and so forth, right? It says, and then for the sites of the male figure, there are the three monastic seats: the upper, lower, and middle monastic seat. Likewise, the 13th Karmapa wrote a text called the in his question and answers of the Messenger of the Gyaltsap, the 13th Karmapa Dorje writes that the upper seat of Tsurpa is the site of the body, the middle side of opening karma is the site of speech, and Karma Nenang is the site of mind. Kunkhyen is the site of qualities, and Pada is the site of activity. So this is like, but if we compare it to white conch, Tsurpa is like the mouth, the belly is like a karma gong, and the tip is karma neon, kamchim, and para like the streamers on a conch. So this is comparing it to the 5 sites of the 5 areas of a conch. So he says that kamchin, and while comparing this, he says kamchin and ne. So there are different ways of identifying the place of the quality. So Shamar Rinpoche says that the place of qualities is Pongri in the west, and so the 13th Kamdu says it is Kamchim and Tre. So where is Tre Kamchim? Where is Kamchim and Tre? So as I described before, we mentioned this name earlier, right? So where is Kamchim and Tre? Some histories so that think that it means Pangput Monastery in Dop. But Pangput Monastery isn't in Tre. It's not in the region of Tre. So if it's Kamchim in Tre, it has to be in Tre. So there's no way that Pangput can be that. We have the Golden Garland of the Kamtsang written by, prepared by Siddhu Chökyi June and another author. It quotes an autobiography of Karma Pakshi. And what that says is, in the year of the rat, in Surpu, at midnight on the 29th of this lunar month, so I'm not sure which year of the rat that was. I don't know so at the 29th of the 6th month. If I don't read the base, I'm not going to read the whole quote. It's basically, so the protector Benakchen with locks reaching the sky and wearing a black crown that covered the earth. And so he had a vision of this Benakchen, and he had a necklace made of hearts. And as he was wearing the necklace, so how many hearts were on that? When he thought about that, he thought that there were 150 hearts on the necklace. And he was surrounded by the retinues of the protectors of the 10 directions, who had a very wrathful appearance. And so this is the vision that Karma Pakshi had. But at that time, Karma Pakshi said, what is this? And he wondered, what is the reason why he's having such a vision? And so that afternoon, he offered a nice big torma. And when he looked with his clairvoyant powers, it was the birthplace of Dusum Khyenpa in Kamtsang and Tre had been destroyed by evil people and so Kamtsang and Tre was so he's clearly saying that Kamtsang and Tre was at the birthplace of Dusum Khyenpa. It had been destroyed by evil people. Some evil people had destroyed the monastery. And that the monastery was now left without anyone taking care of it. They're just leaving the ruins. And so there are he had seen signs that this had happened. And so for this one, Kamtsang and Tre is very clearly Dusum Khyenpa's birthplace. Also, it said there's quite a bit about it from the liberation stories of the 7th Karmapa, Gyaltsap. And also in the travelogue I mentioned before, the Vajra splitter travelogue, it says that there were ruins of the Kamtsang monastery near Dusum Khyenpa's birthplace. And so he actually saw these. And so for these reasons, it's very clear that Kamtsang was in Chewo and that it was near Dusum Khyenpa's birthday in Lhatok. But when you talk about Kamtsang Monastery in Che, it's like you never heard about it before. And so later you weren't able to have it. And so, so why is it that it was later? Why is it became well like that? If we look at the life stories of Chökyi Drakpa, so at that time, it mentions the place of activity, Kamtsang. So at that time there was the Kamtsang, and there were people who were taking care of it. And so it describes clearly how that the monastery was active and how he appointed people to take care of it. But during the time of the 9th Karmapa, there's not even a single word mentioning the Kamtsang monastery in Che. The 9th Karmapa was born in Che. So you would think that there should be some stories related to Kamtsang monastery in Che. So but there's nothing. So I think whether it's the latter part of this 7th Karmapa's life or the early part or during the time of the 8th Karmapa, I wonder if it was destroyed during that time. Then also the 13th Karmapa also mentions the place of activity as being para. Para I've been unable to identify what is the location of this para. And so there are different ways of identifying the place of activity. There is the description by the 13th Karmapa, Doodle Dorje. Then later, Jamgon Köntal Lodottai wrote in his non-sectarian Dharma history, the 3 seats are Tsupo Tulung, Karma Riling, and Karma Nenam, the 3 chakras of body, speech, and mind. Pungra in the east and Kanchim and Che are the sites of qualities, and Bottom and Dushi are the sites of activities. Spreading out from them, there are retreat centers and monasteries covering a large area. These days, when we have come to a degenerate age, when the teachings are in decline, most of these seats have fallen into disrepair. But because of the kindness of omniscient Chökyi June and his reincarnation, the embers of the teaching have been rekindled and calm, and the teachings of practice and realization of the Karma Kagyu have been revived. Papan Chuptan Chukorling itself has become the head of 100 rivers. And so the 3 monastic seats, as I described earlier, they're the same as described before. There's nothing different there. But here, he gives 2 spots, 2 places for the place of qualities and 2 sites for the place of activity. So he says 4 sites for these. And I have put them here. And so here we've got the 2 places. So basically I've added this here. The Jamgon Köntal Rinpoche says that there are 2 places of qualities, Pungri and Kamtsang Minche, and 2 places of activity, Bara and Jushi. Likewise, Karma Kenshin Rinchen Dagye wrote in his explanation of the Black Crown that is Tsurpo Tuling in Upper Tibet. In the middle there is Omen Karma, and lower Kambagana in Lower Tibet. These are known as the upper, middle, and lower seats. So the names upper, lower, and middle seats, the reason they're called this is according to the Tibetan geography, the areas over there. So some people think that it's probably because of difference determined by the chronology of their founding, the order in which they're founded. But it's not that, because the place in the highest or the upper part of Tibet is Tsurpo. So it's called the upper. In the middle, there's the Kamariling or Kamagun, and so that became the middle seat. And in the lower Tibet, there is Kambagana. And so this is just giving the names according to Tibetan geography. So basically, we've got these 3 seats and the 5 sites. They should probably be presented primarily as sites associated with the Dusum Khyenpa. But as before, as I mentioned before, the 6th Shamar Rinpoche and in others' way of descriptions, Pungri Nis is said to be one of the places of sites of qualities. But it wasn't founded by Dusum Khyenpa, it was founded by Karmapas. So if we considered it as founded, we might think that it's a. So if we consider it as being founded by Karmapas, then it shouldn't be included. But maybe. But if we think maybe there was a reason why there was going to. Maybe it's because Kamtsang had been destroyed, and it's maybe this was put in as as a replacement. That could be it, I think. Likewise, as I mentioned, the Pangpuk Monastery in Dorje is the site of qualities. And there are also people these days who doubt that it's founded by the Dusum Khyenpa. But history is written through the time of the 10th Karmapa describe clearly that it was founded by Dusum Khyenpa. So I do not think there is any room for doubt. Now here, Gyalwang Rinpoche gives in his non-sectarian Dharma history, says that Barwa is one of the 2 sites of activity. And so when I think that this Barwa is probably the same as the Para that was mentioned by the 13th Karmapa, Doodle Dorje, but we haven't been unable to identify it. So Dharma is now in the range of Shu in Nima Dzong, in the Nima district. And we have been able to identify this site. So basically, if we sum it up, there are many famous monasteries that were founded by the Karmapas and their heart sons. And for example, there is also the Rumtek monastery that was founded by the 16th Karmapa, the Rumtek Kama Triana Dharma Chakra. And this can also be considered a seat, but in terms of the histories, it says there are the 3 seats and the 5 sites of body, speech, and mind. If we consider these, I think it's better for us to consider these as the monasteries founded by Dusum Khyenpa. If we include the ones founded by later Karmapas, instead of there just being 5, there'd probably be 50 sites. And then if we'd figure out, well, whose site should we include, whose site should we not include, and there'd be debate about that. And so the main point is that the reason why I'm pointing these the three main monasteries, the 3 seats, and the 5 sacred sites of body, speech, mind, activity, and qualities and activity. The reason I explained it is that Dusum Khyenpa went as Gompa prophesied and practiced at Kampa Nenang. And at that site, he realized the truth of the Dharmata. Then many students came who achieved realization. And then he founded the monastery of Karma Nenang. And so the people there became the Karma Nenangpas, or became known as the Karma Kamtsang. So that is where those names are generated. And because he he established a tsang, or a site at Kamtsang, they became known as the Kamtsang monastery. Then he founded Karma Monastery in Surpur and so forth. Then after he passed away, the Karmapas came, and he restored the 3 monasteries and spread and preserved the teachings in Kampa Nenang. And because that was the first, because Kampa Kanyon was the first places that Dusum Khyenpa had founded, he put statues of Marpa, Milarepa, and Gampopa. And so when we talk about the Karma Kagyu, or the Karmapas Kagyu, And then, so the time, that name came from the time of Karma Pakchi, or from later than Karma Pakchi. So generally, all of the incarnations of the Karmapa are like the heads of the Karma Kagyu, of the Karma concentration. And so Dusum Khyenpa was like the person, Dusum Khyenpa and Karma Pasha are the people who founded and the people who spread the Karma Kamtsang teachings. And so for these reasons, the seats that they established and founded are the most important in terms of history and sacred as well. In particular, the places founded by Dusum Khyenpa are like the mother monasteries of the Karma Kagyu, or like the foundation of the Karma Kagyu teachings. So nowadays, in terms of this days, the monasteries that Dusum Khyenpa founded and the monasteries that Karma Pakchi founded, many of them have fallen into disrepair and they're in a very bad state. Even though whether or not the state now is in disrepair or not, for our perspective, we need to respect them and serve them. And we need to recognize why those sites are important. Now, following this, I'd like to continue by speaking about the lives of the successive Karmapa. So the second was the Mahasiddha Karma Pakchi, who was born, in terms of these days, it's Wangbuding village and Wangbuding town in Jiangda, Chengdu. And so the names of the father, mother, and so forth, and the names and so forth are written on here. And so I do not need to read them. But at that time, something that we need to take interest in is that at that time, there are some differences about different accounts of the year of Karma Pakchi's birth. Shamar Rinpoche says in one text that 24 years after Dusum Khyenpa passed away in the year of the rat, or 1216, he passed away, and that he passed away at the age of 80 in the year of the sheep, or 1295. However, it's very clear what year Rangjung Dorje was born in. So if we take Shamar Rinpoche, then we'd have to count them as half years. So there is an old tradition of counting 16 months as a year, or half year. So counting a half year as a full year. So unless you count a half years as counts, if you count it as whole years, then it would be too long. Also, Chengao, Shina Gyaltsam, and Gyaltsap recorded in their in the Blue Annals. They did a lot of research, and they say that he would have had to have been born in the year 1204. But Goshri Palcho Dundrup, Palzo Tonga, Mikya Dorje, Karmatsini Pasang, and most other Kamtsang scholars assert that Karma Pakchi was born in the year of the fire tiger. And so the Metatars of Fighters have written before it. So this was in 1206. In any case, between the births, the passing of Dusum Khyenpa and the birth of Karma Pakchi, there was at minimum a gap of 10 years. And this is the longest interval between two Karmapas, the interval between Dusum Khyenpa and Karma Pakchi. So this is also something important for all of you to know. Next, for the third Karmapa, Rangjung Dorje, I'll give his an introduction to this. His birthday in these days was in his in terms of days is in Bengzha and Jilong Rikadze. So I've written it down here in the Chinese pronunciation. So so this is according to the Chinese pronunciation and spelling, and also the names of his father and mother, the year of his birth, his name and his lifespan and so forth, and when he passed away. There's no doubt about any of that. It says It says he was passed away on midday on the 14th of the 6th lunar month of female earth year at Sanadu. And Sanadu is that during the Mongol dynasty, or the Yuan dynasty, there were two capitals. There was Sanadu and Chimdu. There were two. So Sanadu was, if I'm not mistaken, was the old, probably, if I'm not mistaken, is the old capital of the Mongols. And so the Chengdu is the capital. And so he passed away at Sanadu. And so on that night, on the 15th day, the Rangjung Dorjes appeared in the moon on that full moon day. Many people saw his body, his image in the moon on the next day. And so this is the great day. So at that time, this is written, there's a tanka that was painted during the time of the Mongol emperor that depicted this. Now it's no longer available. And so there is a tradition of drawing Rangjung Dorje in a full moon. Also when Yeshe Dorje passed away, many people saw him in the sun. So sometimes he was called there's also a tradition of making tankas painting him in the images of the sun. And so Karmapa Rangjung Dorje is the one known as there's a way of painting tankas depicting Rangjung Dorje with a face in the moon, depicting Yeshe Dorje as a face in the sun. So the fourth is Rope Dorje. So in terms of modern times, this is in Chamdo Dronke, the Chengdu city, in Bemba district, in Jiagung and Alanka. This is the birthplace in modernism, and the rest is all clear. It's not necessary to say much more about them. The fifth Karmapa, Deshin Shekpa, it was the place he was born is in these days. It was in Yudin Gompa, and so it was born in Linji in Jiangdo County. And I don't need to mention his parents' names. The year he was born was in 1384. He was called Chipel Sampo as his Dharma name. And he was also given, the Ming Emperor also gave him the name Deshin Shekpa. As I mentioned, Deshin Shekpa, the king of Dharma. And so because he was given that title, then he became well known by the name Deshin Shekpa. He lived to the age of 32, and he passed away in 1415 at the Potala mountain. And so at that time, it's the Potala monastery in Lhasa. At that time, the governor of Lhasa had offered that site to the Karmapa, and so that is where he passed away. The birthplace of the sixth Karmapa is Tongwudin, and his birthplace in the city of Chengdu in the Mangda district in Xijiang. And so I don't need to mention his name. His time of birth was in 1416. And he lived to the age of 38 and passed away in 1453. And the seventh, then there's the seventh Karmapa named Chodai Gyatso. In terms of, he was born in Changzhou City in Pyamba and Jinning in Qinda. So this is the modern spelling. The year of his birth was in 1454. And he lived 53 years. And passed away in 1506. So now we have, this is the birthplace of the 8th Karmapa, Mikyo Dorje. And I thought I would speak a bit about his birthplace tomorrow. And the reason is because I've spoken about too much about birthplaces today. And if I say too much, there's a danger you'll all get totally bored. So I don't need to speak about that today. So next, I need to start speaking about the autobiographical praises, because if I don't and only tell stories, I'll never finish them. So of the two autobiographical praises, there is the first stanza of the good deeds, and the first stanza of the praise he searched for themselves. These two stanzas are connected to each other, and so I thought I would speak about the first stanza of the praise he searched thoroughly. Now, this praise he searched thoroughly, if we'd ask about the origin of this, when Mikyo Dorje was in Kompo at Namto Mountain in Kumto, he wrote this praise and offered it to Karma Trinlepa. It was a praise of Karma Trinlepa. But Karma Trinlepa said, I don't have the qualities like that at all, so I can't. So he once again, then I'm giving it to you, Mikyo Dorje. And he gave it, and he offered it back to Mikyo Dorje. And so this is what is said in Shamar Kunji Yenlok's annotated commentary on the praise. So this is similar to how Gyaltsap Rinpoche wrote a praise of Jetsun Dawa, who then offered it back to him. And this became the praise that we call the Miktsema, or a very famous praise written by Tsong Khapa. So it's a similar way that it was written. According to the Dharma history of Feast for Scholars, Pao Tsula Chengwa wrote a commentary, an explanation of this entire praise. Likewise, this praise he searched for, thoroughly is included in the Sita Chökyi Junne's prayer book for the Karma Kamtsang. So in order to speak about the Dharma, I did this too quickly. I made a typo error, so I better go over it very quickly. So if we talk about the topics, or if we talk about the 9 points, it's taught in terms of 9 different points. And the first of these points is, if we take the fifth Shama Kumachun Yenlok's description, it says how he first entered the teaching himself and then brought others into them. So to read the root text, he searched thoroughly for the unerring essence of the teachings of the unrivaled teacher, had the discipline that leads to the true ways, and practiced the teachings in full. To him I pray. So this is what he says. And so the meaning of this is, to explain it in brief, Pao Tsula Chengwa writes that the first says that he was not satisfied by just the mere name of the teachings, but he wanted to search for the true teachings. And so this is the meaning of this. So Mikyo Dorje himself, when he entered the teachings of the Buddha, he wasn't satisfied merely to say that the monasteries and the representations of body, speech, and mind were the teachings. He wasn't satisfied that. And he wanted to research what are the actual teachings of scripture and realization, to really understand that. And then only at that point did he enter the teachings. And then he was able to introduce others to what the actual unerring teachings are. So what is the way that Mikyo Dorje entered the teachings and perfected the teachings, or practiced them in full? And so how is it that he did this? So Mikyo Dorje himself, the way he entered the teachings, and what is what are the stages that he entered the teaching? In terms of the way it appears to ordinary teachings, they're the actual teachings, or the unerring or unmistaken teachings of the Buddha are the teachings of the Vinaya. And the teachings of the Vinaya are primarily the teachings of the vows of individual liberation. So these are the 7 types of vows of individual liberation. And among them, when you go forth and take the novice vows, that is merely entering the teachings. When you take the bhikshu vows, then you're practicing the teachings in full or in complete. And so for that reason, so when Mikyo Dorje was 7 years old, from the second Gyaltsap Rinpoche, Tashinima, he took the complete vows of the lay vows and the 8 vows of Sojong, and then in the presence of the Gondola sacred object, he had his hair cut and took the novice vows, and he was given the name Chökyi Drakpa Palsang. So now Gyaltsap Tashinamja. I thought I should give an introduction to that, but there's not time for it today. So I haven't had much time to speak about it, but if I do have time, I will speak about it more later. So Gyaltsap Tashinamja, he was a reincarnation of Goshe Palja Dundrup. And in terms of history, he was the first one to be given the title of Gyaltsap. So that was Gyaltsap Tashinamjal. And when Mikyo Dorje went forth, what was the sacred object in the presence of which she went forth? It was the gondola. The gondola is the most sacred object, or the most sacred representation of the great encampment. So at that point, so if I have time the next few days, I thought I should give an introduction to the gondola. And so for this is the most important sacred object of the Karma Kagyu. But if we talk about it these days, what is the gondola? Most people just don't know what we're talking about. And so I thought I should give a description of the gondola. But in any case, Gyaltsap Rinpoche gave him the complete lay vows and the vows of going forth. And then he took the novice vows from Tashinamja at the age of 13. And then at the age of 21st, there was a person named Kendra Gompa, who held the lineage of vows from the Kashmir Panchen Shakta Shri. And so there was a person held that was Gendun Gang, who was the Khenpo, and Sedaj and an emanationist of Rahula. So most of the Karmapas had taken the vows of from Gendun Kama, Gang's lineage, and there was a tradition where emanations of each of the great arhats would be present at the ordinations of the Karmapas. And so during the time of the 8th Karmapa, it was the son Rahula. And so at that time, and Chökyi Senbei was the Karma Tunapa was the activity master, and Tashi Sampo was the private questioner. And so in the presence of and became a holder of the complete vows of a bhikshu. And so this is how he entered the teachings and practiced the teachings in full. So I think that is probably enough for today. So we'll take that as enough. And tomorrow I will continue teaching. And I think there are a few difficulties that happened at that point, because tomorrow is the second, the topic of how he gave up or abandoned harmful friends. And so this is something that Mikha Dorje had great difficulty with from an early age. He didn't have much power. He came under the control of his attendants and his changze or stewards, and had many difficulties. And so when he described these histories, I thought I would maybe combine this with the ascension of my place. So when I read the stories of Mikha Dorje's life, and so this happened during the time of Mikha Dorje, and this has also happened in my time. So there are many such situations. And so for that reason, so I thought I should combine. It's probably inappropriate for me to talk about the life of Mikha Dorje and my own life at the same time. It's probably not appropriate, but so I think that so I'm going to, forget about being modest and just say a little bit about this, because I think I hope that it'll be helpful for all of you.
다 도마